Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the German football podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn. And joining me, as always, is Chris Williams. Chris, how have you been?
Bryce, I've been okay, thank you. How have you been?
Yeah, not too bad. I think, just like last week, as you mentioned, when you look at the Friday night game, you think, God, that seems like so long ago. It's happened once again, But we've got plenty to talk about, haven't we? Including even a Monday night game, which we're just podding straight after tonight. And Chris, that Monday night game had just about everything, didn't it?
It did. It had problems to start with, demonstrations, feisty tackles, brilliant goals, tennis balls. It had a lot.
It really did, and we'll get down to exactly what Chris means about tennis balls and all that in a second. But joining Chris and I, as always, is Manuel Veth. Manu, how have you been?
Yeah, busy, Bryce. I feel like all the games are blurring into one. Didn't we just talk yesterday? We did, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah. Wow. And on that podcast, you also said that the games are coming thick and fast at the moment, and it's hard to differentiate between one and the other.
So the last 14 days, and I mean, Chris, you probably feel this as well, we hadn't had a single, so by next weekend, by next Sunday, we will have 14 days of straight a game every day that we'll cover on the Football Ground Network. That's how busy we are right now. 14 days straight. I think I don't think we've ever had that before. So it's been really busy. The games have all been blurring into one, but it's been really good and a lot of fun at the same time, Bryce.
Yeah, very much so. I think also the listeners and readers on the Football Grads network will be delighted because there's so much content going up at the moment, but to the detriment of you guys probably getting some sleep, if being honest. But guys,
sleep,
let's jump.
I don't know what sleep.
Exactly. You don't know what that is. You haven't a clue, right? But yes, I'm sure we'll mention it throughout the pod that there's going to be plenty going on the Football Grad Network in the next coming days or weeks even. But yes, let's jump right in. Let's talk about this Monday night game. So it's not very often in the Bundesliga that we have a Monday night game. But on this occasion, because of the congestion of games, the European games, we've seen Eintracht Frankfurt at home to RB Leipzig. And as Chris said, this game did have just about everything. It was a 2-1 victory. Eintracht, who just managed to come back from a 1-0 win. So the goals were rather early in the game, but that didn't stop the action throughout it. It was up and down. There was feisty challenges. There was chances either way. There was a penalty. Then it went to VAR, and then it wasn't a penalty, and it just went on and on. But Manu, let's just go back to you very briefly and say, it's obviously a victory for Eintracht, a massive result for them, lesser so RB Leipzig. But do you think that RB Leipzig were affected by playing in the Europa League last week and about having a game? Well, it's Monday. They've got a game on Thursday against Napoli. They're ahead in the first leg, but they've got a tough home leg against the Serie A leaders.
I love this question, Bryce, because I feel that's exactly what Chris and I spoke about last week. Remember, Chris, we were saying, how are Leipzig going to handle this Europa League fixtures? And we were both saying Well, we kind of doubted because they had that stretch where they were consistent. Then they have that great game against Napoli in Italy. Fantastic performance by them, by the way. Great result. And I reckon they will probably go through. And so predictable. They go from that fantastic performance in Napoli. Hasenhüttl rotates the squad a little bit, leaves the likes of Timo Werner out, brings uns August on, who scored, by the way, and yeah, they lose. I mean, we couldn't have scripted this any better. Chris, we kind of predicted this, didn't we?
Well, I'd sort of hoped, Manu, that Leipzig will have learnt from their autumn time Champions League games where they were playing midweek and then the weekend, and it's a bit of a daunting battle rhythm, isn't it, if you've never done it before? And I was hoping that they would sort of learn from experiences, but they looked like, and we spoke about this last time, they looked a little bit like Borussia Dortmund did on a weekend after they played Champions League midweek, a little bit lethargic, a little bit flat. And there'll be fans of football clubs all across Europe whose sides play in the Champions League and Europa League in midweek and then go out and have a poor result on the weekend. So there'll be a lot of people who can relate to this. And I was hoping that maybe Leipzig had learned something, but it didn't. They were, bar the opening 5 or 10 minutes, I thought they were quite poor throughout and they looked very, very tired. And they only went to Italy, which in the big scheme of things isn't really that far.
No, it's not. I mean, I've done this flight. It's a couple-hour flight. So I think it's a 2-hour flight from Munich, so maybe a little longer, like 10 minutes longer from Leipzig. It's a short hop, and I reckon they flew straight from Napoli to Frankfurt, which is again a very short hop. So yeah, very, very little excuse in that matter. And maybe you have to add to that Napoli are focusing very much on this area, right? Because they haven't won a Scudetto since 1990. So this Leipzig were fantastic, but Napoli, it felt the entire game they have the eye on a bigger prize, right? Breaking that duck, winning that Italian championship, which I feel is sort of understandable for them. For Leipzig, this is different. I think Leipzig will focus quite a lot on the Europa League, because it's a trophy that, in my opinion, they could maybe even win or go very deep in, right? And gain that much needed European experience. And some of that experience will be for next season, I guess, or further down the road in this season, to actually figure out that rhythm. And unlike Dortmund, Leipzig were actually lucky because they were given that extra day, right? The controversial Monday fixture to play actually on Monday. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And I felt this was so predictable.
Yeah, very predictable. But I feel that we've also got to give a bit of credit to Eintracht. They're having a very good season, and may I just say that before we came on the pod, we talked about many players that we've enjoyed seeing in the Frankfurt shirt this year, and yeah, that sees them move up to third. I mean, Chris, not to talk about how RB Leipzig threw it away, but we do have to give some credit to Eintracht, don't we?
Oh yeah, they did, and I thought they were very, very good. They were 1-0 down, and they turned the game around very, very quickly. I thought Sebastian Haller was excellent. I thought Rebic is the type of player who just seems to be everywhere, and even Marius Wolf, who just seems a bit of an antagonist. He seems to be everywhere, kicking people and putting people on the deck and putting in challenges. And I think they've got a really good balance in their side of skillful players and players who will do what I like to call that dirty work that no one wants to do, which includes tracking back and working hard defensively and getting stuck in, as well as more natural, skillful players. But I mean, they're having a really good time at the moment, and as a conglomerate of everybody seems to be playing well. The defense is playing excellent. Chandler's chipping in with goals again. He's scored like 2 in 5 where he hadn't scored 1 in 2 years. So they're getting goals from places they weren't getting last season. And I know we spoke about this a lot, but last season when Marco Fabian went missing, that coincided with Frankfurt's downturn after the end of the winter break. So this season, everything seems to be falling into place. And Manu said it the other week, and I'll say it again. Niko Kovac has built a team that is hard and aggressive, but knows where the line is and knows when to play football, so they can fight their way back and score 2 goals very quickly and then just fight the game out, which is pretty much what they did. And I think it could have been a higher scoring game, maybe a couple of more goals for each side at one point. Both sides were attacking, but it wouldn't have surprised me for Frankfurt to go on and win this game. Maybe something like 4-1 wouldn't have been a flattering scoreline to them.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right in mentioning Haller's been a fantastic player for them this year. He's a real outlet when they're, especially towards the end of the game, like today, where they have to clear their lines. He's on the end of everything, isn't he? And he's coming up with goals. You mentioned that Chandler's also getting goals. Things are looking good throughout that squad. Rebic is good. Marco Fabian's obviously in the squad as well. Yeah, things look positive, don't they, Manu? That is actually this is in the league, 1 loss in 6 that they've got, and they've still got a semi-final position in the Pokal as well against Schalke. So things are looking very positive for them, isn't that the case, Manu?
Yeah, I wrote in the preview actually, Bryce, that last season around this time, that's when the wheels came off. Actually, 3 match days ago last season, so around match day 20, they stopped winning, and then they only collected another 6 points from match day 20 to 14. Right now, they're 3 points below the 42 points that they had last year, and I can't see the wheels come off this year. I'd be shocked if the wheels come off, and the reason for that is it's sort of an evolution at Eintracht right now. And the Niko Kovac, and this is something that we criticized so much last year, right? That hard physical play was sometimes a bit too hard, and it cost them a lot of players through injuries, and it cost them a lot of players through yellow and red cards. Now, Kovac has learned a lot, and I think this really shows how good of a coach he is. He's learned a lot from last season, and I think with Freddy Bobic, the sporting director, Freddy Bobic was very smart, bringing in the right players to complement this side. I mean, Kevin Prince Boateng, what a steal. The guy has been incredible for them. He is a hard leader. He is very flashy at times, but he is not afraid to go in where it hurts. Very outspoken personality, someone who's grown up immensely, I feel. We all remember, of course, when he walked off the pitch in Italy for anti-racism demonstration. There was always a lot of controversy about him. And I feel that he has really grown up, and without losing all that flashiness that I think is very important, he's become that really good emotional leader, and he's sort of walking that fine line himself, but through age, he's now 30, has learned, he's almost personifies Eintracht Frankfurt. He's a player who's always been a little bit over the edge, all right? And that's always prevented him from becoming that real superstar. Now he's 30, he's kind of matured, and that really much represents that side, in my opinion, right now. That the fact that he is so mature, that he has found a balance. He's hard, he's flashy at the same time. I mean, I remember a couple weeks ago, he scored a goal where he could have also broken his legs. He went into that ball so hard, there was 3 defenders around him, and he just went in, he scored. Today he scored an amazing goal again. For me, he is the symbol of Eintracht's success. Of course, with Freddy Bobic and Kovac. And Kovac, of course, knows Boateng because they grew up in the same neighborhood in Berlin, right? A really rough neighborhood in Berlin. So I think that everything is just going on there. And we called them at times already the Atletico Madrid of Germany last season, right, Chris? But I feel like, remember when Atletico had that revolution under Simeone a few years ago, and all of a sudden they broke into that phalanx of top clubs in Spain? Maybe, just maybe, we're seeing this right now here with Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if they could break in to the top 4, which is, I don't think that's out of their realms of possibility, especially with the teams around them and how they've been playing. But we've criticised them in the past for being a little bit too hard. Today they picked up, I think it was 6 yellow cards. Boateng's out for the next game. He's suspended through a yellow card suspension, and then they've got 3 players sitting on 4 yellow cards. So this is just the time where they need to watch it maybe a little bit. But I'm with you, and seeing them live when they were away at Wolfsburg the other week, I was very impressed with them. Then the game, whether you mentioned that Boateng scored in, which was the Gladbach game. I thought they were very good in that as well. And I thought they've been very good tonight in another live game.
Well, that's it, Manu. You talked about Kevin Prince Boateng, maturing a little bit. But even looking at the stats and throughout the squad, what he actually leads, which you wouldn't expect, is ground duels won in the game. So it's quite interesting that he's not just a bit of a flair player. He creates chances, he has shots, he scores goals, but he's also very much getting stuck in as well. So he's got a good balance, I think. Within him, and that can definitely be down to coaching as well, can it? So things are looking rather good for them, and they're playing at Stuttgart next. Just before we move away from them and talk a little bit more about the controversy in the game, Manu, where can you see Eintracht maybe finishing the season? Based on this result and how things have been going for them so far.
Well, Bryce, I think there's a real chance that they're going to finish in the top 4. Of course, it's going to be it's a long way still to go, and there is that. Chris highlights it, the way they play. There's always a danger that they're losing players through suspension, but I think the squad is a lot deeper. And we're going to talk about money and how the Bundesliga is spending its money in a moment. But Eintracht Frankfurt for me are an example of a club that have spent their money very well, and they have used that money very well to strengthen that side. We were laughing about how little they paid for Ante Rebic. They paid 2 million euros for him on a permanent deal, which is just amazing and incredible.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's insane.
Just madness.
Boateng was signed on a free transfer. Heller was signed, I believe, for 9 million euros. Salcedo, the Mexican defender, who I thought was very good today in the back three, he looked very much like Vallejo did last season. They can sign him on a permanent deal worth 2.5 million euros from Chivas. This is all peanuts. They spend peanuts, which is incredible.
How good Salcedo was as well. Obviously you and I speak on the Mexican podcast, Golazo as well. And, I was looking into his stats, see how well he's been getting on. He's actually been the most accurate passer within that side as well. And that just adds to how ridiculous it is how cheap he is. But it's very much, the less money you have, the smarter you've got to be with that money. And, Chris, you'd probably agree with Manu and I that they are very smart with how they spend their money.
I think you have to be in today's modern Bundesliga, and I know we're going to go on and talk about money, and clubs are quite rich, and we'll explain why they're quite rich, but it's still not a place where where owners go out and spend 50, 60, 70 million pounds or euros or whatever currency you want to call it. They don't spend that vast amount of money on players, and it's still a place where talent spotting is looked upon as a fantastic asset to have, not just plenty of money. So Frankfurt are showing their wealth, I suppose you could call it, their wealth of talent, that they can go out and spot these players and get themselves real bargains and push themselves up the league. Now, can they ultimately challenge Bayern Munich at some point because Bayern are so cash rich? That's something that we'll have to look at. And could it be a point where Bayern start buying their players because they're very good? That is something we'll have to wait and see. But if you're looking for a team that could potentially, push on to challenge them, well, at the moment, take any of that top 6. So Dortmund, Frankfurt, Leverkusen, Leipzig, or Schalke, and they're so close on points. And I know we talked about it before, but that is, in essence, that's helping Bayern Munich be so far ahead because the others are so finely balanced, and Bayern will always get a result like they did on the weekend. So it's very, very interesting. And I'm with Manu. I think there's something very special happening at Frankfurt, and we could be 12 months away from a Bayern, Dortmund, Frankfurt fight. And that doesn't mean forget Schalke or Leverkusen or even Leipzig. And at some point, maybe we could see a 6-way battle for a title. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, Lewandowski said in a Kicker interview today, yes, it was actually today on Monday. I was getting my days mixed up. He said that, the Bundesliga has to be careful to lose the 4th Champions League spot. There needs to be more teams than Bayern and Dortmund challenging in the Champions League. And Eintracht Frankfurt, if they make the Champions League, of course, that will be a far step. But I can see someone like Frankfurt eventually getting there, becoming a challenger, and RB Leipzig, of course, as well. I think RB Leipzig, of course, they have to be a bit careful right now. They are currently outside of that top four, but they could eventually become one of those clubs as well. They just need to, we've explained how it works with the 5-year coefficient, the money that you need to be able to make in order to appease financial fair play. That's a problem zone for RB Leipzig. Another side, of course, is Leverkusen, a team that I also think, could do better. And then Schalke, and all these teams need to do a little better. And Frankfurt perhaps is using the fact that some of these teams, Dortmund, Schalke, RB Leipzig to a certain extent, Bayer Leverkusen, haven't done that great in the last few years in the Bundesliga, but also in the Champions League. And they're kind of saying like, look, we're doing things a little bit different. You know, we do talent spotting a little bit different. We have a coach and a sporting director that are willing to sign players that are not always easy. I mean, another one is Marius Wolf, who is an 1860 product. Was when I covered 1860, was considered one of the best street footballers in German football, but it has a very difficult personality at times, and he was banned to the second team in Hannover, and then Eintracht Frankfurt picked him up on a free, and look at where he's now. He's on the edge of qualifying to play for the German national team. So they are not risk adverse, right? They are very good at spotting the right players. And that, again, is a great parallel to Atletico Madrid. And I think they're using a great time where some of the bigger sides are a little bit weaker. And remember, once you are in that Champions League bubble and you're making that kind of money, and with the fact that the Commerzbank Arena is a huge stadium, there's a huge, enormous amount of financial power in the city of Frankfurt. They could do what Dortmund did in the early 2000s, right after bankruptcy, sort of resurrect themselves, and they can do something similar to Atletico did, and that's great. I think that is what's happening in Frankfurt. It's something very special at the moment.
Manu, in the sides that you mentioned, would Wolfsburg also fall under that? I mean, it's come out, isn't it, that they've got a rather high wage bill?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about Wolfsburg a little bit later on because, of course, their head coach resigned today, Martin Schmidt. But yes, absolutely, with the financial power that the Volkswagen Group has, even after the diesel scandal, it's criminal what's happening with the money that they have there. There's no better way of putting it, but I think we'll have to talk about Wolfsburg in a little bit more detail later on.
Yeah, I think we'll get to that all in good time. There's plenty to talk about. But let's go back to the Monday night game, tonight's game, where we've seen, things on the pitch get overshadowed by some controversy. And Manu, I think we're going to go back to you to explain exactly what's happened here. And then I think we'll all probably be injecting with a bit of our opinions. Monday night games, why were the fans protesting against it by throwing tennis balls onto the pitch? I mean, what's wrong with a Monday night game? I mean, in the UK, it's something that we've done for quite a while via Sky Sports, and it's something that I think a lot of people quite enjoy.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy. And Chris, you are very involved in fan opinions, etc. So I'm really curious to hear your opinion on this as well. But maybe just to recap, so the Monday night game was actually brought in, not actually for commercial reasons, but it was brought in to give teams playing in the Europa League a little bit of a rest, so that they can push some of the games on Thursday. The teams are playing on Thursday to a Monday night. The reason is this, and this is also something that people forget, this is actually to protect the Sunday afternoon for amateur teams, so that amateur teams in the lower divisions can play and don't miss a game that's shown on television. I think in the UK they have something similar. They ban certain live games. They don't do that in Germany. They just don't schedule a game for those times, right? So that was actually one of the main reasons why they did this. It had actually very little commercial reasons. But yet, because there is such a heated atmosphere right now between that fine line of commercialization, this also plays in the 51+1 rule that we discussed, I believe, 2 weeks ago with John, right? Something that's also very controversial right now. So that's kind of like another drop in that bucket. So fans are very upset. Fans are upset that they have to go to some games on Monday night, which means they sometimes have to take off work or they can't go. It's harder to go and see those games. It's a whole controversial issue, right? But the funny thing is actually, and there wasn't just the tennis ball protest, there was fans actually standing behind on the ground, right behind the advertisement banners. So this was actually pretty heated. But there was a funny statistic published by the Kicker, and fans in particular, they're a funny bunch, and they're always reminiscent about the good old times and how football was less commercial in the 70s and 80s. And the Kicker actually published a statistic about games being played midweek in the Bundesliga. And currently we have 52 games out of over 300 games. We have 52 games being played midweek, which is less than last season, and is half of the midweek games that were played in 1984-85. There was 106 midweek games in that season. Say the season that following was 103. The same in the 90s. There was 135 games midweek in 1991-1992. 70s also had more midweek games than today. So those people that are nostalgic, they should better not look at the statistic, because it wasn't better in the earlier days. The schedule is actually very much designed to appease fans. But it's still, I think it's not necessarily all against that Monday game in particular. It's more about the commercialization of the game that the fans are worried about. And this plays very much into that 50+1 debate that we had, right, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. And I can see the problem, Bryce. I think sometimes when people are looking at teams in Germany and they go, oh, what's really a problem? So the UK isn't particularly a big country. Germany it's 1.5 times the size of the UK. So what you've also got to remember is the UK isn't a football league. So you've got the Scottish Football League, you've got the Welsh League, obviously, and you've got the English league system. So it's only teams, give or take a few, Swansea, Cardiff, Gretna, etc., who play in different leagues. You're looking at just England. So it's not that bad, really, in the big scheme of things. If Newcastle play, I don't know, a London-based team, the transport links, you're looking at two and a bit hours. If you're playing, if you're Freiburg and you're playing against Leipzig, that is quite a big journey to make on a Monday night when you're supposed to be in work on Monday. And Manu's dead right, obviously, but it's ebbing away at this. Football's no longer for the fans, it's for someone else now, be that television fans, or be it for fans abroad, or be it for a vehicle for the DFL to sell a game abroad to places like Japan, where it's exceptionally popular. It's the ebbing away, and we had the Chinese thing, last season, with the Chinese teams looking to not exploit but push the league in China, because obviously there's a massive captive audience there who love football, and it's just what's the good old adage? The straw that broke the camel's back. So the Friday game isn't particularly popular. It's football, as Manu says, in the good old days when people look back through their rose-tinted glasses. It's a Saturday and a Sunday game. Now, obviously, stats say that football's played midweek throughout the ages, but I think the Monday game, all of a sudden, the weekend gets spread out. You've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. What's next? Well, when's the next Wednesday night game coming in? Because we have them a couple of times a season, don't we? The English Vodka, the English Week, as it's called, and it's called that for a reason, because here in England we play football all the time. I think there was a game every day last week, so they don't want to be in a situation like that, and you can understand it, because all of a sudden going to watch football costs a lot more, because you're not getting the free rail travel, because you're having to travel vast distances. So I can see where it is, and where does it stop? And I think this is what German fans in Germany are worried about. Where does it stop? First, it's Friday night games. Then it's Monday night games. Do we going to have a Wednesday game? Then what? All of a sudden, the very last match day is going to be played in Japan. It's all at the 39th game we had it in the Premier League. Where's the 39th game going to be played? Is it going to be played somewhere like Singapore? No, it's not. It's a football for the country, and you have to remember that football relies on its fans. Without fans, football is nothing.
That last sentence nails it, Chris. Yeah, that nails it for me. I think people forget that the reason football exists is because of the people that watch it, not the other way around, right? So I think that just nails it for me.
But guys, can I put the question to both of you? I mean, first of all, we're saying that the game happened on a Monday night, not because of a commercial thing, but more because of the European football, and then the amateur leagues. They didn't want to clash with that on a Sunday. So the first question I would ask is, when's the best time to play this game then to keep everyone happy? Is there a better time where you're always going to upset someone? And then I suppose the next question is, how many more of these Monday night games have they got planned at the moment?
There's 4 more Monday night games this season. So we haven't seen the end of this yet. But this is a very good question. How do you do it? I personally don't know if Leipzig have really helped with playing on Monday and then playing on Thursday again, right? I think maybe having them play on a Saturday evening and an evening game would maybe be better. I don't know how much that rhythm really helps. Sundays are unpopular. I think Sundays are even worse than Mondays in a lot of ways, or Fridays. But Sunday afternoon, a lot of people like to do other things than go to maybe a soccer stadium in a lot of ways, or play themselves. I mean, I played amateur in Germany, and Sunday is very much reserved for that. So it's a difficult question, Bryce, and I don't really have the answer for it. I think to be honest with you, as many games on Saturday as possible is the ideal, at least for me personally.
Want natural, healthy-looking shine and voluminous curls and waves that make you look like you just stepped out of a salon? It's easy with Conair Jumbo and Super Jumbo Hot Rollers. These 12 ceramic flocked rollers heat up in just 85 seconds. And because they're infused with ceramic, they transfer heat evenly for big, bouncy, long-lasting curls. Twice the flocking of competitive products means more heat protection. Wire clips ensure a secure hold. Makes a great gift for yourself or someone special. Go to Conair.com for Jumbo and Super Jumbo Hot Rollers now.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
I'd go along with that as well. I think Saturday, Germany's a little bit different because, and Manu's already mentioned it. So the Bundesliga will traditionally play on a Saturday, and the other games play on a Sunday. I know there's a variation amongst that. So there are some games that'll be played Saturday morning from the lower leagues, and then there's Bundesliga games that'll be played on a Sunday. But traditionally, that's how all of football is shown, because it doesn't affect. And Manu mentioned the ban that the FA put on any live football being broadcast at 3:00. That's why if you're in the UK, you can't watch the 2:30 Bundesliga games, because they can't be broadcast over 3:00, because the FA is scared that if you show Barcelona against Real Madrid, Bayern Munich against Borussia Dortmund, Liverpool against Manchester United at 3:00 on a Saturday, then somebody won't go and watch Peterborough play. They won't go and watch Nuneaton play. They won't go and watch Cambridge United play. They won't go and watch their local amateur teams play. They'd rather stay at home and watch top flight football. So that's why it doesn't happen in England. And it's not really been a problem in Germany, which is why you can watch every single game live on television. So I don't see why we can't have more 2:30 kickoffs, because it's not like anybody's going to be detrimented against, because all you need is a Sky Bundesliga package, and you can watch, there's 10 channels, so you can watch up to 10 games at once. But well, maybe 9, because everyone wants to see the conference still, the one that flips around from game to game. So I don't know why these games can't be played, the majority of them, on a Saturday, and then the Monday night game, if it needs to be played on a Sunday, it can be played on a Sunday for those teams that are in Europe on a Thursday night. I don't think playing Monday and then playing again Thursday will help Leipzig, particularly as they were very poor this evening. They've only now got a couple of days to try and work on it. Now, imagine they get beat 3-0 by Napoli on Thursday night. Can't see it myself, but it might happen. You don't know. And well, why's that happened? Well, they've only had a couple of days rest. So for me, I don't really know if it's going to work. I think the next one is Dortmund against Augsburg. And Dortmund, the union have already said that they're not going to be there, so you could be in a situation where half the yellow wall is missing. And then another one is Werder Bremen against Cologne. Well, they're two teams who will probably take whatever games they can get at the moment because they're in a poor position, especially Cologne. Don't think they'll care when they play because they need the points, but I can see their fans not being particularly happy about it, especially down at Cologne. Werder Bremen, I'm not sure, they might just take it on the chin and play, but it's going to be really interesting for me for this next game because the reaction in Frankfurt was something that I didn't think would be as ferocious as it was. The game was held up for I think 7 or 8 minutes because hundreds of fans were pitch side with banners, and then you saw the start of the second half with all the tennis balls and the streamers coming out. I think that will pale into insignificance for what we'll see at the Westfalenstadion.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chris. I think that in Dortmund it's going to be either very loud or very quiet, and it's sad because this game, it was such a great game, but it was overshadowed by this. And you could see that both sides, the first 10 minutes really struggled because the fans were still standing right next to the pitch, not in the stands, but right down below, right? For the first 10 minutes. And it was a really weird atmosphere. So I'm kind of, fearful to see what's going to happen in Dortmund. As for Köln, Bremen, I think for both those sides, it's going to be very good practice for next season. When they have to play more Monday night games in Bundesliga too. So I think for them, that will actually be a bonus.
Manu, you mentioned about the sides playing on a Saturday night. Maybe that would have been a benefit to the likes of Leipzig who played on Thursday. It's going to be as far away as you can put it without it interfering with Sunday, or it happened to be on a Monday. But say it was on even later on the Saturday nights. Would that be a possibility? Is that something that could be done? So it's on maybe the same time as the Friday night game or the Monday night game, but actually on a Saturday, something like that. Can we make that a possibility?
Oh, late kickoffs on a Saturday night. I don't know, Bryce. People like to go out on Saturday nights in Germany. I think it's not like Spain or Italy where, there's an 8:30 game. I don't think that would fly. I think you just can't get that done.
I think the 5:30 game on a Saturday, that is a television fixture, as is the Friday night game. So the only way you could get around it is to have another 2:30 kickoff, or bump one of the 2:30 kickoffs on a Sunday onto the Saturday. So, for instance, this week, Augsburg against Stuttgart doesn't really need to be held on Sunday, because neither of the teams in Europe. Gladbach against Dortmund, you could argue, needed to be played on the Sunday. So this game tonight, Frankfurt against Leipzig, could have been moved into Augsburg and Stuttgart slot, and they could have gone into the 2:30 kickoff. So it's hard. It's hard to do, but it's a little easier, I feel, for the Bundesliga and for the DFL because they don't release the ratified fixture dates so far in advance. So in many other countries, Spain, England, you get the full fixture list at the start of the season, and then they're moved for television or they're moved for cup or European games afterwards. The DFL, they only release blocks of fixtures. So if you're looking to plan, I want to go and watch a game in May, you don't know what day or what time that game's going to be because those block of fixtures haven't been released yet. So they do have the capacity to be able to plan a lot better in the league. And I think this is an occasion we'll see maybe where they might have to use that extra planning time a little better, because I can't see the Monday night problems going away. And what the DFL won't want to do is have games on a Monday night broadcast around the world like they were tonight, with late kickoffs and obvious discontent. It doesn't look good for the league at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Chris, you mentioned that obviously we've got to respect the fans. The fans are what drive the game. And fans being able to get to these matches as well. And it's maybe unfair them having like some more Friday night or midweek games. But do you think from a financial point of view that, more games being on throughout the week is going to bring more money to the league? We talk about 50+1 being good and bad for the league, but would bringing more money through TV be good for the league and the sides when it comes to the likes of competing in the Champions League and in the Europa League?
No, not really, because I don't think the Bundesliga will drive the sort of figures that you've seen the Premier League drive, which is now on a downward spiral, by the way. Sky and BT know they don't have to pay extortionate fees anymore, and they can't pay them because people don't want to pay £75-80 a month out of their back pocket when there's an austerity on across most of the world. They don't want to be lashing out extra income for satellite television. So you've seen that in the latest round of Premier League fixtures. The Premier League television rights, they've dropped by millions, and the Bundesliga isn't on that level. So you can't say, the Monday night and the Friday night game is going to bring in an extra 5 billion for worldwide television rights, because it simply won't.
Yeah, and that's sad too, Bryce. We got the latest numbers from the Bundesliga. They were published in Kicker Business, and to get us on that topic, the Bundesliga is not a poor league. We were talking about how Frankfurt used the resources very well, but the Bundesliga is the second richest league after the Premier League, and the gap has closed significantly. Back in 2013, when we had two teams in the Champions League final, the Bundesliga was the fourth richest league behind England, Spain, Italy, and France in terms of television revenue. Now it's the number 2, and the teams have been poor in Europe, right? The revenue this year, and this is for the 2016-17 season, was 3.3 billion. The revenue for the year 2017 was actually over 4 billion euros. So it's not a lack of money. They don't need to squeeze out more money, really. They're making a lot of money already. The money is not the reason why teams are losing to Ludogorets and Nicosia in the Europa League and Champions League. That's not the reason, in actual fact. It's the teams are not doing enough. When you look at some of the money, for some of the figures that we got, it's actually quite incredible how much money Bundesliga teams have and how poorly they do in relations to it, especially when you think back to 2013 when they didn't have as much money and did really well.
Yeah, very, very good points. So more money is not the answer, eh? Even though a lot of people would suggest that, eh? But guys, let's talk about European football. That was a bit of a bridge towards it, I suppose. We'll talk about Borussia Dortmund. So we've seen that over the weekend they didn't just beat Gladbach. Yes, that's right. We still don't have John on here, but they just about beat them. It wasn't the most convincing of performances, but they were playing on something that's didn't quite resemble a pitch, but that's a discussion maybe for another time. Let's talk about them in Europe. They beat Atalanta last Thursday. It was a close call with a goal right at the depth by that man, Michy Batshuayi, after being 2-1 down. Obviously things weren't exactly perfect were they, Manu, but a victory that they'll take anyway. And how do you feel that they're going to approach this week's game, taking on the side sitting in 8th in Serie A?
I think they just need to go and win it. That's the easy answer, and it's not going to be easy. I think that Dortmund haven't been playing the way Dortmund have been playing under Tuchel in particular, and a lot of people have criticized that. I feel that Stöger took over a side that was very much out of depth, had a lot of issues going on left, right, and center. And the first thing he did is said, okay, we'll buckle down now, we'll get our defense set, and we'll just sit down and get results. And with results, usually the confidence comes. And when you have more confidence, then you can start playing beautiful football again. So the judgment is out a little bit early. That said, of the 9 games he has played, he has won 6, he has drawn 2, and he's lost only 1, and that's the quarterfinal against Bayern. So that's actually a really good record. And even the quarterfinal against Bayern, they almost came back and turned that game around in the last minute. So I think, yes, they're not their former selves. There's a lot of to criticize, but you also have to see where they're coming from, right? This team went through all of November and most of December without winning a single game. And now they're second in the standings again, and they look like the big winner of this match day to me. And they might, if everything goes the way we think it will go, they might be in the round of 16 of the Europa League. Remember, they actually didn't win a game in the Champions League. They actually, which is remarkable in itself. So under Stöger, they actually finally won a game in Europe this season. And for me, Dortmund are one of those sides that have spent a lot of money and have done not very well with that money. And that's probably because of coaching and the things that have been going on off field and all that kind of stuff with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Bosch and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think right now, the critics are out there and they're really criticizing Stöger for it, but right now he's getting results. And for me, in the end of the day, that's really what matters. If I was a Dortmund fan, I'd be just saying, look, we're second now in the league. We're probably going to be back in the Champions League next year. We have a good chance of going deep in the Europa League. What else is there to like? I mean, you can focus on playing beautiful football in the off season and then, look how it goes next year.
Chris, how do you feel about it all? Obviously, Dortmund's a club close to your hearts. Stöger is putting up a good record if we look at the games that he's won, as Manu just said, but maybe not the prettiest of football that we've seen over the years with Tuchel and even with Klopp there. I mean, what exactly is your opinion on it all?
Pretty similar to Manu, really, on the whole. They had a fantastic start to the season, and then, the wheels came off spectacularly, and they had a really, really poor run of form, which, ended with Peter Bosch being sacked and Peter Stöger coming in. And sometimes you need a manager to come in and it's a real old football cliche, but steady the ship, and that's what he's done. The draws against Hertha Berlin, I was there for it. It was particularly a poor game. The game against Freiburg, left it very, very late to equalise. And then I thought the game against Cologne and Atlanta typified what this current Dortmund side is, which is pretty ropey at the back, but quite exciting going forward. So I suppose you could look at the Gladbach game and say, they didn't leak a goal, and they were under a lot of pressure. If you look at the match stats, Gladbach hammered them with shots on target, but he didn't go in. Now, that could be more reflective maybe on Gladbach, but I thought when they fell asleep in the game against Atalanta, they were punished very, very quickly, and they came back to win that game. So it's 6 and 2 threes. Manu's quite right. What do you want as a Dortmund supporter? Because you've had an awful season, and your manager that was going to come in and steady the club for the next 2 to 3 years and develop all these fantastic youthful produce that was coming through. He's gone after 4 or 5 months, and who's going to come in properly after that, you don't really know. So Stöger's come in and he's been given a job to do, which is, get Dortmund back at the league and back into Champions League qualification for next year. And he's pretty much done that. And I don't know if they'll get through to round of 16, because this is a very, very tough tie. They've got to go to Italy, and I could see a similar sort of game going on. Maybe this time they wouldn't be able to pull it back. It wouldn't surprise me to see them go out on away goals against Atalanta, but that would then let them concentrate on getting back up the league into Champions League. So I would say that you have to judge Peter Stöger at the end of the season, really, on where Dortmund have finished and how their record's been. And, is he the man to take them on in the future? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I've not been particularly impressed would be the wrong word. I've not been particularly, thrilled by watching Dortmund play, especially compared to this time last season under Tuchel and then Klopp before it. But, managers move on, players move on, the styles move on, and as long as Dortmund are winning, in the short term, I'm sure the fans will be happy.
Yeah, I would also argue that it was kind of hard seeing the best out of Dortmund in this particular instance. That field, oh my word, that's what you call a Kartoffelacker in German, potato field. It was so bad. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. It's an embarrassment for the league.
His ankle.
Oh, so horrible. And it definitely, I mean, Dortmund, and everyone was so excited about seeing André Schürrle, Marco Reus, and Mario Götze play together for the first time ever, right? The three are close friends. They're all very gifted footballers, and everyone was so excited to see the three of them pair up with Michi Batshuayi. And they really tried, but every short pass that they played, everything, basically all the skill sets that they had were lost on that pitch. And yes, you can say Gladbach had to play on that field too, but Gladbach, right now, they're a construction site in itself. There's so much going on with them, period, that the pitch just added to this. And, I think they probably, as a side, are better suited to playing on a field like that. But you can't see a technical gifted football on whatever that was that Gladbach's groundkeeper put out. I think that's just, I mean, there was actual patches. It looked like someone was like, they put patches of field, onto the existing field to patch up holes. I've never seen anything like it. It's an absolute embarrassment.
I think what was key for me is that I didn't realize how bad it was until I think we're lucky on a Football Grad network because we've got access to Getty images. So as that game was going on and you could see the high quality, high resolution images that were coming from the game onto the portal where we're able to log into to get the match images, and the stripes on a football pitch, normally a stripes on a football pitch, you cut it in one direction and you cut it the opposite way in the other direction. That gives you the stripes. The stripes in this pitch, they were laid on stripes, so they'd come in quite rightly, like you said, Manu. And it looked like the road down around the corner from me, where there's so many potholes. They've just come in and dropped a patch of tarmac on the top, and it was an absolute disgrace, that field. And I would expect to see better at my son's high school.
I was waiting at halftime just to see Bill Murray trying to blow up some gophers on the pitch, Caddyshack style. It was that bad. But guys, let's talk a little bit about Borussia Mönchengladbach. I know John's not here. What a pity. I'm sure he is happy to miss this one. But that's now 4 games that they've lost in a row without scoring a goal. It's a little bit concerning there, isn't it, Chris? But is it just as simple as, well, they haven't really got an out-and-out goal scorer?
I think that and the players that you would normally expect to be playing well are playing within themselves. I'm a big fan of Lars Stindl. I think he's been particularly poor. And he's not one, he's one of, let's say, 11 players at any given point that are playing poor. And, they're 10th on 31 points, which is mid-table. And unfortunately for them, that's where they are at the moment. I don't think they're poor enough to be 12th or 13th, but if their run doesn't change, they're not that far off 14th in the big scheme of things. They lose a couple of more games, they could find themselves right down near the bottom. So they're going to have to be careful. But yeah, when I've seen them so far this season live, they have not impressed me. Now, hopefully, I'm going to be there on match day 25 to see them play, and I hope, 1, that pitch is in a better state, and 2, that they give me something to look forward to, because that, especially the game against Eintracht, they were woeful.
Yeah, things not looking good for them at present. But another side that things aren't looking too positive for, that we mentioned earlier in the podcast, was Wolfsburg, who managed to lose at the weekend. A little bit unfortunate for them when it was so close, and there was a Lewandowski penalty right at the end to see them lose to Bayern Munich 2-1. But it did see the end of Martin Schmidt's time there. He's handed in his resignation, much to the club's surprise. It seems like Tim Schumacher was the managing director. There was a little bit surprised by the whole ordeal and thought that he would be there to the end of the season, that they would turn it around. But that wasn't quite the case. Manny, what exactly happened here, and is this actually good news for Wolfsburg?
Oh, it's never good news when a coach leaves, resigns, gets fired, etc. I actually wrote in the match report for Fußballstadt.com that in my talking point, that was my talking point, that this could be the end. And I actually would predict that Olaf Rebe, the sporting director, is next, that he will probably be actually let go. We talked about money early in the podcast and the squandering of money in Wolfsburg, have a salary budget that's just 2 million euros less than Atletico Madrid. And look where they are. That's an absolute disgrace. And when you spend that kind of money, it's kind of fitting that this is happening at a club owned by the car company that had the diesel scandal just recently. It's an absolute disgrace, in my opinion, how money is just being blown out of the window at Wolfsburg. And when you look at this squad, it's just like patchwork. They went into the season with Andries Jonker, and Andries Jonker plays ball possession football, but they weren't even convinced that Andries Jonker was the right man. So I think 4 match days into the season, they fired Jonker, they brought in Martin Schmidt. Martin Schmidt likes to play counter football like he did with Mainz, but he didn't have the players for it. So the question, of course, has to be asked to Olaf Rebe, the sporting director, why did you go into the season with Jonkers, sign all these players that Jonkers wanted, and then you fire him after 4 matches and you bring in a coach that doesn't fit to the squad? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think that he will probably be the next out of the window, and I think that things just need to happen in Wolfsburg. The way the club is run, the way the entire setup is, it's just not coherent, and it is a typical case of a club having too much money, not knowing what to do with it.
Yeah, Wolfsburg have suspended training as well for the team, and they said that they're going to have an announcement rather soon. So things are looking a little bit tricky there. They're facing Mainz away from home on the Friday night game, so they're going to need to get to the training grounds and resolve things rather quickly, aren't they? Okay, well, another side that seems to be in a spot of bother at the moment is Hamburg. We keep mentioning about their clock ticking and how we should, well, really cover it up. I think it's not doing them any favours, but they've appointed a new president, and I, if I'm honest, don't know too much about him. Manu, hopefully you know a bit more than I do. What can you tell us about him? Yeah,
this is Bernd Hoffmann, and he was at the club actually in the early 2000s, and they were actually really successful with him. He was not the president, he was the CEO of the part of what they call in German the Aufsichtsrat, right? So he was not the president, but he was part of the team that actually got Hamburg to be very successful. At the time they reached the semifinals of the then UEFA Cup. Were eliminated by Fulham, and they had a goal to be in the top 10 of European clubs, and then he was let go by the then president, one of many. I'm not gonna go down the list of many presidents that club had. So he is now back. He wants to be full-time president. The current president is Meyer, the outgoing president rather. As Meyer, and he is someone who was very involved in the business side in Hamburg, but didn't do this as a full-time job. Hoffmann wants to do this as a full-time job, and this is interesting because it could mean that Jens Todt and the current CEO Heribert Bruchhaben could be out of their jobs, and even Bernd Hollepach, apparently the coach that was just signed 2 weeks ago, he is in danger of losing his job as well. And I mean, in the meantime, Chris, you sent out a great picture of fan protests with the clock. The fans saying, before the clock turns off, we're going to hunt you through the city. And this is, of course, I mean, the clock has been a major topic on this podcast many times before, but I feel like this clock, TikTok is, I can just sense that if they do make these changes, Bernd Hoffmann is a visionary. He has done great work with Hamburg in the past. But this is such an odd time to come in, and how much can you really do at this time? You can't make transfers. Are you going to fire the coach? What changes are you really going to be able to do for changing the sporting director and the CEO? Oh man, I think it just adds fuel to the fire.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. It's definitely just throws more up in the air as well, doesn't it? It's hard to know where the club's actually going at the moment, but down really. But let's see if they can pull it around in this coming week as they face Werder Bremen away from home in the late kickoff on Saturday.
Oh, but that's going to be a big game, Bryce. The Nord Derby. Oh, that's going to be a heated affair. relegation battle, and I can see Tampa's flair in this one really badly.
Well, you're going to have 15th taking on 17th, so yeah, rather close. There's only 6 points in it's in the league, and I suppose some people would also describe that as a 6-pointer from another point of view, But guys, that more or less does it for this week. We've covered quite a bit, haven't we? But I have no doubt that both of you are going to be very busy this week. Chris, what have you got going on, and what would you like to draw people's attention to, maybe?
Well, it's unbelievably, it's Champions League and Europa League week again. So we've got all the previews and live reports, hopefully, fingers crossed. I may be at Chelsea tomorrow night, waiting for very, very late confirmation. But if not, we're at Arsenal on Thursday night for their round of 32 second leg against Ostersund. So I'll be looking forward to that. And hopefully, Bryce, fingers crossed, might get the call that we're invited to Chelsea-Barcelona.
Oh, very exciting indeed. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, Chris. Manu, what have you got going on this week? As Chris said, it's a lot of European action once again.
Yeah, so the previews, I guess by the time this podcast is out, most of them will be out. The Champions League previews are out, the Europa League previews are coming on footballgrad.com and fußballstadt.com, and then we have CONCACAF Champions League on footballsidage.com, and then we have match reports as well. So I'm doing the Bayern Besiktas game and the Shakhtar Donetsk against Roma game. So yeah, lots of content coming, and I guess straight football till next weekend. So you can find all of that at Footballgrad Live. It will be all tweeted out there. You can follow me at Manuel Veth, or I occasionally leave some comments on various games and things that I see. And I like to also tweet out like statistics, like the numbers that we've just seen. So, yeah, that's basically what's happening, this week, on the Footballgrad network.
Very indeed, on the Footballgrad network. And yeah, guys, head over to @FootballGrad Live on Twitter. You'll see all the previews, match reports, and well, you'll see tons of articles, as always, by these two fellas and everyone else in the team. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please head over to the likes of iTunes or wherever you pick up the pods, and just give us a bit of positive feedback, or even get over to Twitter and interact with us. We really do appreciate hearing from you all. But that more or less does it for this week. Thanks for tuning in, and auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, ich hab zu holen.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.